What is up, Pod Pals? It's your buddy Adam, and you are listening to Let's Talk About Your Podcast, where I give you my best podcasting and podcast launch tips. If you are looking to launch a podcast, if you're wondering, how do I launch a podcast? How do I grow a show? How do I get my brand out there via podcasting? You are in the right place. Today, we're talking about SEO optimization for your podcast. All right. So one of the newbie mistakes that I see a lot of podcasters making is that they aren't necessarily trying to think SEO when they name their show. All right. They are out here being cute with the title. They're like, oh, I really want to name it this obscure phrase that means something only to me. And we don't want to do that. We want to be SEO optimized. So I want you to think with your title, with your show description, and with your episode titles, how do we get some keywords in there? The first thing is you need to understand your audience. You need to understand who they are, what their pain points are, and what their hot button words are, and what are they searching when they're looking for a show like yours? When they go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, what are they typing into the search engine when they're looking for a show like yours? How do we find this out? We ask people, post on Facebook, ask in your newsletter, ask friends that listen to shows like the one that you're going to launch. Ask clients, hey, if I was to launch a show on such and such topic, or if you were interested in listening to podcasts on such and such topic, what would you search in the search engine to find that show? Those are the keywords that we are putting into our show title. So, and we need to be very clear when somebody sees our show title, they need to know what it is. Truth be told, all cards on the table, I have rebranded every single podcast that I've ever launched. As I get deeper into it, 30, 40, 50 episodes in, I'm like, we could pivot just a little tiny bit and I'll really be attracting the exact right person. So sometimes we have to take the pressure off ourselves and realize like, all right, I just need to get real about this and actually, dial in my niche a little bit and make everything a little bit more SEO optimized. Now they understand better who I'm trying to serve and who I can best serve. So with your title, like Podcasting Business School, you know exactly what that is. The title of this show, I've even SEO optimized it a little bit, even more recently, where now it's called Let's Talk About Your Podcast Launch Tips. All right. We know exactly what those things are. You don't want to have the everything for everybody is everything show. Okay. Well, what is that? Who is that for? I don't know. All right. So title SEO optimized with pain point words. If you send a newsletter out, a survey, and your ideal listeners are constantly repeating certain terms, certain words, certain pain points, we have to find a way to sneak those into your title. All right. The other thing that we really want to make sure is SEO optimized is the podcast description. I like to have terms in there, again, pain points, really keyword search terms, but also how-to questions. Think about if you were researching your topic and you were going to ask a how-to question into Mr. Google, what would that question be? So like for this show, I put in there how to launch a podcast, how to start a podcast, things like that, because those are the terms and the phrases that we're going to pull up in Mr. or Mrs. Google. All right. So think about that show description. Again, don't get too cute and obscure with it. Like really lay it out there. If you are looking for tips on list, keyword, if you're asking yourself questions like how to X, how to Y, how to Z, that's what our show description should look like, and just fill it with keywords. Then our episode titles. This is something that's also pulled into SEO optimization, where like with this show, podcasting tips or podcast launch tips, that will be in every title, because that's what this show is all about. That's who I'm trying to serve with this show specifically. So if you're searching podcast launch tips or podcasting tips, hopefully this is popping up. Maybe that's how you found the show. Congrats. So those three areas are where I really want you to focus on. A fourth kind of second level area would be your individual episode description, dropping some keywords in there as well. But podcast show title, podcast show description, podcast episode titles. Those are 3 areas that I really want you thinking key words. Now, let's say you interview somebody that's got a big brand or a big podcast and they're kind of famous. They got a big following. Make sure that they're, and if their brand really aligns with you and your audience, the audience that you're trying to serve, there's some crossing of streams there, then make sure that you have their show title and their name in their episode title and mention it again inside of the show description. I've had people that I've interviewed, even for this show, where they search their brand or they search their podcast in Google and my YouTube video will pull up. And I'm like, all right, that's exactly what I want. I want to be known as somebody that has interviewed this expert, providing a slightly different tilt on what they normally have to say, and people will venture on into my world. All right. So those are some SEO optimization tips. Quick hitter episode here today. I'm going to drop several of these in this season of the show. So if you have questions about how to launch your podcast, how to get up and out there, stop podcrastinating and get into the podcasting world, then hit me up. Hit me up on Instagram if you have questions at Podcasting Business School. I'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy this episode, share it out on Instagram and tag me. And if you're ready to rock, head on over to the website, www.podcastingbusiness.school. Check out my podcast launch blueprint. It is amazing. It lays everything out there step by step by step. We do one-on-one coaching sessions. It's got a course built in. We can get your show up and out there in no time. All right, Pod Pals, I appreciate you. I'll be back for another episode here shortly. Until then, I will send you out into the podcasting world, wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads.